Velites, thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. Dr. Arikana, powerful message to us again. The Africans, we need to wake up. Like one yellow papa said, that this revolution that we have begun, we need to concentrate on it and see how we are going to empower ourselves. And stop thinking about how we'll get a veto power, a permanent seat in UN Security Council when our voices wouldn't be heard. That the reason to which China, Russia, and other countries are heard is because they have been able to empower themselves. They have woken up and they have all their munitions, their weapons that Yellow Papa is scared of. And these are pointed directly to Yellow Papa, and they know with the slightest mistake, fire on them. The Africans were made to believe how inferior we are. Africans cannot do anything. So when we go to the negotiation table, these people decide the percentage they give to us. Our leaders do not think that Africa is also like the other countries. And the reason is because of the divide and conquer. That Berlin conference was something that destroyed Africa. So they are able to divide us. Look at some small countries she mentioned, like Timbuktu. How can this small, tiny place be a nation on its own? And we've seen what Lesotho is another country. And we see the tariff that Trump gave over 40% to Lesotho. This small economy. So because they are able to divide us, that's why they are able to conquer us. And that is the reason to which they are thriving in Africa. And they've made us to believe we can do nothing. And everything black is bad. Everything European and West is beautiful. And that is why till date, Africans will want to change everything of ours just to be like them. And that is the reason to which they are asking us to pay colonial debt too.
When you look at Africa today, it's really Africa of yesteryear. And until we, the Africans, come together and realize that we're still very much under the control. Destiny. Yes, we're still very much under the influence of our colonizers. We're told, you got to pay colonial debt. What is colonial debt? They said, we brought you education. We built a few roads. We taught you about eating with a teaspoon and a fork. We call that colonial debt. You're going to pay that to perpetuity. To this day, African countries are still paying. Francophone African countries are still paying colonial debt. A decisive decision that was taken by our colonizers in 1884 when they decided to meet in Berlin during the Berlin Conference and chopped up our Africa into the tiny little countries that you see today. You see, you got to understand the reason they came together to meet in Berlin was to figure out a way that they can effectively exploit the African people and see to it that Africa and its people are forever defeated. So the Berlin Conference was a very pivotal decision that was made by our colonizers. So the more the countries got together, the more countries that came out of it. The more the tribes got together, the more countries that came out of it. The more the tribes didn't get along, the bigger the country came together. So basically, it was clearly divide and conquer. So that was one. Secondly, they also saw the seed that made Africans believe that everything African was bad and everything Western, particularly in those days, French and British, was more desirable and better. So that seed also was sown back in 1884 during the Berlin Conference. Fast forward, nothing has changed. The little country of Burundi, the little country of Rwanda, the country of Djibouti, Benin, Central African Republic, Togo. As a matter of fact, all the African countries were such small economies that it's very difficult to survive. It's very difficult to really take the country to the highest level that it can be. And also, we have very small economies that are easy to destabilize. So it's not bad enough that they broke us up into these tiny little countries in 1884 when they were leaving the continent, particularly France. France made its colonies, former colonies, sign what we call the Pact for the Continuation of Colonization. In this pact, the African countries were told, you got to pay colonial debt. What is colonial debt? They said, we brought you education. We built a few roads. We taught you about eating with a teaspoon and a fork. We call that colonial debt. You're going to pay that to perpetuity. To this day, African countries are still paying, Francophone African countries are still paying colonial debt. They also said, we will manage your money for you. All your monies will be printed in France. 85% of your bank reserves will be kept in France. And then collectively, we'll pool that 85% from your countries, and we will invest in the French stock market. And under the French name, and you countries may or may not know what the returns are. And then not only that, the mineral resources, the oil, all of it discovered and yet to be discovered, France has the first right of refusal. French companies, they're going to be doing the mining, running the oil rigs, all the major projects, private and public. French companies have first right of refusal. The African companies only get whatever the French companies do not take.
So the picture that we have in the 21st century is Africa trapped by its past.
Very much so, because that pact for the continuation of colonization is in the books today and is still in force. French countries don't print their own money. Francophone African countries. So when you look at the pact for the continuation of colonization, you look at, for example, you look at Germany. What the havoc Germany created in Namibia, Germany continues to have a very strong hold in Namibia. Look at Belgium. What Belgium, King Leopold did in the Congo. Over 75% of the population of the Congo was annihilated by King Leopold. And Belgium continues to have a very strong presence in the Congo. The British, not as strong a hold as the French, but they still have a significant influence. British companies who own significant assets on the continent. 75% is reported of the resources at the London Stock Exchange are resources coming out of Africa, owned by English companies. In doing business in Africa. So when you look at Africa today, it's really Africa of yesteryear. And until we, the Africans, come together and realize that we're still very much under the control. Destiny. Yes, we are still very much under the influence of our colonizers.
So what do you think should be done, for example, to change the future and have better destiny? What should Africans do?
Africa needs to wake up. Okay. The Africans need to wake up. Why are we still continuing with the pact for the continuation of colonization? The Francophone countries need to come together and in a united way let France know that simply cannot go on. Africa is big enough. If only the Western world could stop exploiting Africa. Africa can absorb everybody. The whole world could move into Africa and everybody will do well. But the greed and selfishness coming out of the West is keeping Africa from moving forward. Now, there are others who may beg to differ and say, but Ambassador, there is a lot of corruption. I'll say, yes, I agree with you. Some might say we have corruption. The numbers are saying about $50 billion leaves Africa to Europe through corruption. Well, I'm saying, who is receiving that money? You say it takes two to tango. I can't be corrupt by myself. So while we talk about corruption in Africa, let's also talk about the corruptors who are receiving that $50 billion. That's one. Secondly, if you want to talk about the $50 billion that's coming out of Africa, claiming that the leaders are taking the money, yes, we do have some, very few African leaders that are not doing it by their people. The majority of the African leaders are doing very well by their people. Be it as it may, you take 50 billion through corruption. France alone is taking out of Africa 500 to 600 billion every year. So if we want to talk about this 50 billion, we must also talk about the 500 billion. That is just France alone. We're not talking about Germany. We're not talking about Belgium. We're not talking about Britain. Are you with me? It's upwards of billions of dollars are coming out of Africa. Nobody wants to touch this 10,000 pound gorilla. I am saying, in order for us to really look at 21st century Africa, we must understand our history that continues to be alive and well in our lives today. And guess who needs to make that change? Who needs to get that understanding and realization? It's you and I, the Africans.
According to these people, they brought us education, but Africans, we brought education. Even the Greeks came to Africa. They came and learned all the numeracy, the mathematics, the science, the theology, everything. These people learned them from Africa. And when they finished, they changed the narrative and told us that we couldn't read and write. You take the Chinese, they have a way of writing. Since they are representing theirs with symbols, it was the same thing Africa was. But because we didn't write in their language, they told us that we couldn't read and write. And that is what we have believed, that Africans, we are not literate. But our artifacts, all these things that they've stolen, if we were not literate, how were they able to do this? Our ancestors, how were they able to craft all these things that today we are seeing them in their museums and they are making huge sums of money out of it? That they gave us roads. They taught us how to use the fork and knife, and that is why we have to be paying colonial debts. And after that, we now have our central bank wherever they are, so that at the end of whatsoever, we'll be paying them. But because they are able to change the narrative to suit them, we believe them. And until we wake up and start telling the story as it is, like she said, Africans, we are the ones who are always destroying ourselves. So when an African wants to describe Africa and everything Africa, wahala for you. You even feel pity for yourself of being an African. Because that is how they program us to believe that everything of ours is not good. And that is why even till date, we believe that before we can make it in life, we have to cross the Mediterranean Sea, go and suffer there before we can make money, come home and live a better life. But our brothers who are there, if they want to tell us the pain they are going through, you even wish to be here. The heaven these people always talk about is Africa. If Africa is hell, why is it that Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso ask them to leave their countries and they are after their lives? That should tell you that these people are hiding something bigger. And until we are able to unite, combine all the economy together, we won't be able to defeat them. And that is why they are doing everything possible to make sure that we don't unite. And any leader that will come out singing the songs of unity like they did to Gaddafi when Gaddafi rose to unite all Africans, he became the target. That is the same way they are doing to Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso, because they also rose up and they are singing the songs of Muammar Gaddafi. Unity. We should all live together as one people, under one leadership, under one military. And this is going to be a big threat to these people. So we are better. We are not less as they made us to believe. They never gave us anything. Reading and writing in yellow purpose language doesn't mean you have education. This is the education that always asks us, what is the highest mountain in the world in Africa? What is photosynthesis? When we cannot use the knowledge to solve societal problems, what can we bring out of the schooling that these people have given to us? But our time, our forefathers' education gave us skills. Africa is the best. There is no place like here. And that is why everybody is running to Africa. And when we are sacking them, they don't want to go. Africa is poor. They don't love Africans, but they love our natural resources. Africa is poor, yet they cannot live without us. They always say they are coming. Save us from what? When they are having their own internal problems, are they able to save themselves? Africans, we don't need anybody to save us. Their presence in Africa is what is keeping us poorer and dividing us. The notion that everything black is bad, we have to do away with it, including our religion. We don't even have religion, we have spirituality. It's yellow people that have religion. And they say religion is opium of the masses. Everything African is beautiful. Let these people not deceive us any longer. We have to wake up and start cherishing everything of ours. And that is what they fear. That is their fear. The day the African will be self-conscious, they are doomed. And they are doing everything possible to make sure we don't get that self-consciousness. United we stand, divided we fall. And united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world. In the United States of America.